Tracing the history of African Americans and country music is worthy of a head tilt. Country music largely owes its creation to African American music traditions. Its origins include gospel, blues, Appalachian music, and Creole music, and a substantial amount of 20th century country musicians were African American. But as we got to the middle and later parts of the century, country music didn't seem to be a part of the black musical consciousness. And despite developments such as Southern Soul, country rap, Southern rap, and groups such as Hootie and the Blowfish, attention always seemed to be elsewhere. But a lot of it was captured when songs such as Old Town Road by Lil Nas X were released. And when you combine two southern genres such as trap and country music, you can get some pretty interesting results. But you can skip Bar Song by Shaboozey. There's just nothing captivating here. Shaboozey took the most routine parts of hip-hop and country and put it under a formulaic lyrical structure. A common argument I hear in favor of simplicity, and I would argue oversimplicity, in popular music is that music is not always meant to be a high-level thinking experience, and that not every song needs to be virtuosic. To paraphrase Andrew Huang, if you're trying to get hyped up for a trip to the club, Beethoven isn't going to cut it. And I get that. Even some of the songs that I enjoy are the musical equivalent of comfort food rather than Michelin 3-star restaurants. But that doesn't mean that casual music can't be well written or well produced. In the hip hop scene, a lot of people who simply want to get turned forget that you can have a hyped backing track and well written lyrics at the same time. This Is How We Do It by Montel Jordan, Party Up by DMX, Stand Up by Ludacris. All songs you can listen to without thinking too much, yet they're songs that show the capacity for clever lyrics and engaging musicianship. Quality doesn't have to be sacrificed for the sake of relatability. The best musicians can do both. There are definitely better examples of country hip-hop blends out there, even if not all of them are top tier, but the one I thought of was this one. While I had listened to quite a bit of southern hip-hop growing up, especially Ludacris's word of mouth, it's the first time I can recall hearing aspects of country music in hip-hop, especially references to the rustic lifestyle, and that's why it's my counterexample. The process of appraising Too Cool to Be Careless was deflating because it's part of a problem I see frequently in electronic music. I've got a yarn to weave here. Within the first minute of the song, I knew that the chord structure and bass line were familiar, but I couldn't put my finger on it. That stayed in the back of my mind while I listened through what I considered to be a drab, check-the-boxes deep house track that could have attracted attention, but didn't take advantage of any of the musical material at hand. It certainly didn't seem worthy of topping the charts. After about 2 minutes, I noticed a similarity between Pawsa's album art and a thumbnail in the suggested videos. Remembering how the chords sounded familiar, it made me wonder if Pawsa had sampled or interpolated the track. Some of y'all probably know where this is going. So after listening to Pawsa's nonsense in its entirety, I decided to give the song and the thumbnail a listen, and it hit me like a subconscious freight train. While some people my age might remember Getting Money by Junior Mafia and Biggie Smalls, I heard Way of Life by Lil Wayne and Big Tymers when I was younger. Both of them sampled Don't Look Any Further by Dennis Edwards and Siedah Garrett, which I have to admit sounded nice, but then it slowly dawned on me what little creative work Pawsa actually put into his work when he sampled the song. One positive from this is that Pawsa at least acknowledged the song that he's heavily borrowing from, because there are producers who don't do that, and sometimes I wish a train would hit them. But it doesn't change the fact that he only gave Don't Look Any Further a slightly different coat of paint, and did very little to make the music more interesting or present it in a different way, which one should do when covering, remixing, or heavily borrowing from a different song. And we've been down this road several times. There's nothing artistically wrong with borrowing another musician's material, as long as you're either trying to replicate the charm of the original work or add your own creative spin or input. But that's not what Pawsa did. He took a work that already sounded good, did very little with it, and somehow made it sound unremarkable and sterile. I'm actually kind of impressed. There are much more inventive ways to take the original material and put it in a house music context, and it wouldn't surprise me if someone has done so already, but this was a wasted chance. The second positive is that the counterexamples, yes, plural, are simple. Either listen to the original or listen to the two hip-hop tracks that sample it. That being said, good on Dennis Edwards, Siedah Garrett, and their songwriters for leaving such a legacy with this song, as it clearly affected songwriters and producers in later years. While this isn't my first time listening to a song from Defected Records in the series, I'm glad I get to talk about it and its label, Glitterbox. Throughout its history, Defected has proven to be one of the strongest house music record companies on the globe. House music itself owes its growth to LGBTQ communities and other marginalized groups dancing together in a very inclusive and positive atmosphere, and Glitterbox heavily embraces this part of dance music culture. On a musical basis, they tend to lean towards disco house in particular. Melvo Baptiste and Annette Bowen collaborated on Did You Pray Today, and after listening, I actually figured out that this was a cover of a gospel tune by Lisa Taylor, which Glitterbox acknowledges front and center. In this case, Melvo chose a style of house that's reminiscent of the early to mid-90s. The texture is relatively thin, and even though there are moments in changing harmony, the bass line never changes. It's a key example of what I call a mono bass line, and we've talked about it on the show before. The biggest shift in harmony is around the 2-minute and 9-second mark, where the gospel nature of the original truly shines through before it goes back to the usual bass line and chords. The problem is that I feel like Melvo can be more creative here. For example, he could use the mono approach whenever there's a verse, and then use a more diverse chord structure for the choruses. This is especially since a lot of verses tend to have higher grade lyrical content, whereas the choruses are usually simpler and more memorable, as it gives listeners, especially casual listeners, something easy to sing along with. So is there a way to use Did You Pray Today in a house music framework? Yes, but as much as I love Glitterbox and respect Melvo, I don't think this is it. I would actually recommend listening to the original or the R&B mix, which I wouldn't purchase, but I found more impressive. While I would love to cite a counterexample that highlights the shared history that house and gospel music have, a different song came to mind as I put this video together, and it gives me a lot of nostalgia since it was played frequently in my younger years, but it's also helpful. There are times where I feel like modern Christian music tries to be cool or on vogue, and it often comes off as corny or disingenuous. This song, and quite a bit of Kirk Franklin's work, proves that you can both preach biblical messages and write good music at the same time. Having high musical standards can be tough sometimes, but in the long run, having high standards is better than having no standards at all. Until next time, peace.